Hey, what's going on, guys? This is Alex Cook. In this video, what I want to talk about are some problems that I have with the personal finance industry. So I'm not just talking about advisors at, like Schwab or Fidelity, whoever, but I'm talking about the whole advice on money industry. So that includes the TV talking heads, the AM radio hosts, all the bloggers, the YouTubers, targeting a mainstream audience, because there are some people out there putting out good content, like there really are. I'll mention them at the end, like some people that I actually have learned a lot from myself and I'd recommend to others. But there is a mainstream sort of consensus that I want to push back on, or at least get you to maybe think a bit more with this video and kind of challenge some of your own assumptions. And if you are a financial advisor, maybe something that you could consider for your practice. So the core of what I want to talk about is lack of education, or the education that they do give to clients. It just isn't very good. So it's either financial advisors, they're not educating their clients at all. They're just putting them in an ETF portfolio, and okay, maybe that portfolio is fine, but they're not really teaching the why, or they're not talking about really the value of money. Or you see some advisors or talking heads, they are giving some education, but it's not very good. So let me talk about that. Is a lot of the mainstream consensus, I think, revolves around a sort of play not to lose strategy rather than a play to win strategy. So the focus too much is on just how to save money, how to just cut corners and extreme couponing, things like that, and just mass frugality, rather than how can we maybe make more money. Because, the goal here is quality of life. It's not just to save money because it's like the cool new thing. Like, the goal is how can you have a quality of life? How can you get to a point where maybe you don't need to work anymore, because at one point you're going to retire, you're going to hit an age limit where maybe you don't want to be working 80 hours a week when you're 70. I barely want to do that when I'm 50 or much younger than that. So, example, if I said I got a $3 or $4 cup of coffee, to this mainstream sort of consensus, that would be considered a big no-no, but I would push back on that, because what if I'm using that cup of coffee to network with somebody? Maybe that results in me getting a better job or a promotion, something like that. I build a good connection that ends up becoming a client. Like there's so many ways you could take this. Is I think that value on how can you use money strategically, it's something that isn't really taught. And that could be a whole new rabbit hole to go down. I would suggest to financial advisors, this is something maybe you want to consider on thinking through this, how maybe you could educate clients on this, because I just don't really see other people doing that. Here's what kind of steered me to this is, I ran a retirement calculator on myself, and I started asking the question, am I getting to financial independence at an acceptable age? I personally want it sooner rather than later. I'm not content with just being financially independent when I'm 60. Maybe you are, but I think the people watching this channel, they want something a bit more. So running the numbers on myself, it got me thinking and made me realize that I need to approach this problem different than just what we've all had beaten in our heads about, just save more and let compounding interest do its thing. And look, I'm not saying just go blow all your money. I'm not saying don't invest. No, I'm telling you should invest. Like that's great. But what I realized is if I really wanted to scale my wealth, I would need equity in something to really scale my wealth. I would need to develop some other revenue streams, so then I actually have some money to invest, rather than just having my job be my only source of income. So that's partly why I'm doing this channel. That's one venue to that end. I have some other venues. I think this whole discussion isn't really something that financial advisors do, or this whole personal finance industry does. Is it becomes a very play not to lose strategy, and it's in a way it's kind of a lot of the same problems the fitness industry has, where the fitness industry is just almost kind of content with people not being in shape, rather than how can we get people to something greater. Here's another thing I want to talk about is lack of creativity in thinking. So I'll give you some examples. So like, what exactly is a international mutual fund? Okay, and why is it considered high risk? Because if you ask the mainstream kind of consensus, they would say, well, international is high risk. Okay, but why? And first of all, what even is international? So like, if I'm driving north, like as soon as I hit like the Canadian border, like, are we just in the freaking danger zone here? And when we say international, I do know the industry definition of that, but like, what does really Canada and Japan and France have in common with each other Honestly, not necessarily a whole lot, except just tangentially that they're part of a global economy. But we're talking about different companies. We're talking about different cultures. There's so many different factors here that it all gets rolled up into this international category. And I get it that the industry needs to make something that's good enough so you can almost have a sort of cookie cutter solution. But I just kind of encourage some creative thing to challenge some of these assumptions. Like, let's say I have a YouTube channel, so people could be watching this wherever. Like, let's say I'm living in Germany. Like, do I consider myself a foreigner? Does that make sense? Like, do I consider my home country to be this foreign international place? Like, am I overweight the S&P 500? Like, if I'm living in Germany or Japan, maybe, but here's just some of the things I would want you to think about and kind of challenge some of those assumptions. Another thing, so I talk a lot about crypto. A lot of financial advisors, like, they would just say, oh, don't touch crypto at all. It's high risk. Look, I agree it's high risk. Like, literally at no point have I ever said that crypto is not high risk. I have never said that crypto is not aggressive. Like, I do say that. Like, I don't dance around that subject at all. I do think, though, that this is something that is going to stay around. So I think having some knowledge of it is important. And look, people are going to hear about it somewhere. Like, if they don't get the education with somebody that has like a more grounded understanding in finance, like they're going to get it from wherever they can. It's going to be from weirdos on the internet or like their friends or whatever. I would prefer that they get their knowledge from someone who maybe has a more grounded understanding of finance that can tell them how to manage risk. Because like I'm not anti-risk. I think risk should be taken prudently. I think risk should be taken in a broader context of a portfolio. And a broader context of how much overall risk can you take just based on your circumstances. I'm not anti-risk. It just has to be risk that's done in a prudent manner. That's something that I'd want people to consider. And then another thing I would say is, well, how do we define risk? We define risk as historic volatility. And you can read Nassim Taleb, and I probably totally mispronounced his name. You can read his stuff on that, and things may appear to be low volatility until one day they completely blow up. The classic example of that is 2008. Mortgages, real estate, it's stable, it's always going to go up until one day it didn't, and we almost blew up the entire world economy in the process. This is also, in a way, what steers people towards real estate, because they think, well, just because you don't see the volatility, that it must be lower risk. Now, look, I'm not against real estate. I'm not against risk, but let's call it what it is. Like, real estate is not low risk just because you don't see the price movement. Yes, you do see stock prices or crypto prices, whatever, commodities. Like, you see it go up and down all the time on the market, but you don't see that on your house. Like, that doesn't mean it's not there. Like, that just means you're not getting your house appraised every single day. So when you go ahead and sell your house, whether it's 3 years or 30 years or whatever, you kind of mentally draw this line from point A to point B as if it went this just straight line up. And that just may not be the case. It might have been zigzagging around all over the place. You only just have 2 data points because that's when the house actually got appraised. So point being is this kind of thought process, I don't see it enough in kind of the common consensus of financial planning and financial education. So these are the things that I would want you to think about. If you're a financial advisor or just a regular person trying to think about your money, these are the questions that I want you to ask, and maybe consider that yourself. Especially when you see something on the news or see people talk about money investing. This is the kind of thought process that I want people to go down. And it's something that I don't really see covered well. I would say, I would really say consider why a lot of the financial talking heads feel the need to publish so many books on the same basic topics. Like, are we trying to just sell products here, or are we trying to sell solutions? Like, how many books do you really need on how to retire? Look, I get it that there may be a lot of books on, the stock market as a general thing, because that's an extremely complex topic. Many different approaches to it. You have like high frequency traders, you have, value investing. Like, there's so many different niches to that on investing. Like, you could spend a lifetime studying that, but when it comes to retirement, well, okay, you save money, you invest it, and then eventually you get a point where you have enough money, and well, then you can stop working if you want. Like, that's it. I just saved you a bunch of money buying a whole bunch more books on Amazon on how to retire. Like, that's literally what you do. You save up money, you let it grow, and then you get a point where you have enough. So like, when we start getting into the weeds on, hey, should I contribute slightly more to my Roth IRA, or should I keep it in my individual account because it'd be a bit more accessible, I don't have to take a tax penalty. Okay, look, that's great. Maybe let's have that conversation at some point, but like, are we starting to get into the weeds here? when we haven't first addressed the first few issues, which is, hey, are we making enough money? Like, are our revenue streams dialed in? Like, Jim Wendler, who is a fitness coach, he has a great saying, which is majoring in the minors. So I see a lot of mainstream financial advice. Like, it starts like majoring in the minors, like getting into the weeds on just really the fine tuning. Like, hey, should I maybe contribute a bit more to my 401k if it has this match, or should I do this thing instead? Like, okay, like that's great. Maybe we should have that discussion at some point, but like, are our revenue streams first dialed in? Like, are we making enough money? Are we doing what we can to make sure that we get a promotion, maybe get a better job, get a higher paying job? That should be step one. All right, step two is then, all right, let's build up our emergency fund. Let's make sure the debt is taken care of. Let's start some basic investing. But I see a lot of mainstream advice really getting caught up in the weeds. I'd say one of the worst offenders on this are accountants. Like, get really into the weeds on the capital gains tax realization, which, okay, like, yeah, you're gonna have to pay taxes at some point. Like, that's the only guarantee in life besides death is taxes. A lot get really caught up into that capital gains tax when that is maybe one factor out of a lot that you should consider. So don't, pay attention to some of these details, but in the context of the bigger picture and the priorities of work of well, which, if I could choose between making more money or, putting myself in a position where I could do that with, better networking, better skills that I could bring to the table. Like, I've said before on this channel, if you're trying to turn like a couple $1,000s into 100,000 or something like that, you're probably going to lose it with the amount of risk that you're taking. Like, you'd be better off trying to spend that money on something that could, maybe grow your skills so you have some more, marketable assets that you could bring to the table for yourself, that you could position yourself maybe for a better job, or maybe even go into business for yourself, start a little side hustle or something. Like, you'd be better off doing that. And you'd certainly be better off doing that than just taking that $1,000 and, hoping it's going to compound, in 30 years to maybe a couple more thousand. Like, yes, that'll happen. But again, are we trying to play to win, or are we just trying to play not to lose either? So people that I do recommend that who I think have good concepts on this, Wall Street Playboys, Ramit Sethi, and also a personal friend of mine who he has a brand that's growing, Albert Tristan. You can find him on Instagram at Millennials Mentor. These are people that I think just kind of get it, and they understand the value of money. Now, as far as, hey, what kind of ETFs or mutual funds should I pick out? Like, there's a millions of people that can talk about that. I'm not even going to broach that subject here because, there's plenty of good content out there already from other people. But I think what is not really discussed enough is the value of money. How can we strategically use money to make more in terms of, developing some marketable skills that we can bring to the table, or, building networking connections, things like that, which, yeah, you may have to spend $3 or $4 on a cup of coffee to do so. Okay, sorry. I know the frugality blogs will hate me, but that's okay. I just got to speak my personal truth on the subject. Lastly, I would say a message for financial advisors. Look, the robo-advisors, like, this is not just some trend. Like, robo-advisors, this is not going to go away. So if you want to make it in this industry, now I would say if I went back into wealth management, I haven't worked in there in a long time, but I would say if I went back into wealth management, this education piece is absolutely something that I would focus on, because that's not something that a robo-advisor can provide. Like, a robo-advisor, it can pick out ETFs, it can pick out mutual funds, but it can't talk to people. Like, it can't teach them. And that's something maybe you can offer. Maybe you can kind of teach people the value of money, because look, people need to hear it. People need to hear it because they're not going to get it from just weirdos on the internet. And the people out there that are making content, I don't know. To me, it seems like it's play not to lose instead of play to win. So as always, talking about personal finance can be kind of a controversial topic. So I am kind of curious what you think. I'm curious. Don't get into specifics on don't tell me dollar amounts, but I'm kind of curious what kind of strategies you guys are using to boost your financial situation for yourself. So leave a comment, hit subscribe if you like this, and thanks for watching.